Hello, listeners. It's Tuesday, James. People's poll. 100th people's poll.
It is.
100 people's polls.
The podcast that's become quite famous for us doing subjects that are not FPL. So
yeah,
on the
that's
100th
actually true.
People's poll podcast, we thought we'd do an FPL podcast. But I think it's so relevant at the moment in terms of chip strategy and stuff that we look at FPL topics. So there were 3 choices on the People's Poll vote that was out yesterday. The first being what we're going to discuss, which is what a free hit Game Week 27 team should look like. The second option was what to do on a Game Week 28 wildcard. We're going to be covering that off on our Patreon podcast today, as that finished second in the vote. And I'm also going to be covering off for our advanced tier patrons today in a video format, navigating Game Week 30 without a free hit in terms of the best way of potentially going about doing that. But we're going to be talking free hit 27 today. Suj?
Yep.
Are you doing it?
No, probably not, because I've only got 4 players missing. Rudiger, and then the 3 Liverpool boys, Salah, Trent, and Jota. And assuming we get any kind of news on Jota that he's a goner, I'll just sell Jota, move him on. I've got all the money in the world. And
have you got Sonny?
No.
That's probably where you'll end up going as a transfer.
Maybe. I might take a -4, downgrade to actually Willock, for example. Keep him in there for not this week necessarily specifically, but the 2 that follow, because it's double. And upgrade Antonio to the other Spurs player. What's his name again?
The other Spurs player, Mr. Harold of Kane, who might be a doubt for tomorrow. We're hearing at time of recording.
Well, if that's true, then obviously Sonny will come in to my thinking very clearly and easily.
At time of recording, I think we should assume that Harry Kane is fit, and that's where we'll take this discussion. I think the first place to start is when to and when not to free hit. So what's your reasoning for not? Is it just that you've got 11 players? Yeah,
I've got 11, and I'm quite happy with my 11. So, yeah.
So if you were free hitting, how many changes do you think you'd make?
Well, I'm looking at my free hit team that
which
I
haven't
in front
planned
of me,
yet.
And there's only one that would carry, one player in my current squad that I'd carry through.
My guess is that's Cancelo.
Actually, sorry, there's only 2 players. 2. Broja and Cancelo are in for me.
You already got Broja, have you?
I've already got Broja.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that was the most joyous transfer of the season, selling Cristiano Ronaldo for Broja.
Can't say I blame you for that one, mate. So for myself, I don't intend to do it.
Nope.
I clearly, as I said on yesterday's podcast, I do not have a team this week that is going to be anywhere near as good as a free hit team. Of course, I could improve it. But I don't think it's disastrous what I'm looking at. So I'd rather hold it for something else. Now, one of the most frequent questions we got yesterday for the podcast, which we kind of overlooked because we knew we'd probably be talking about it today, was, is this the best week to free hit? And what people mean by that is it's not necessarily the immediate gain of using it now. It's about, right, what's to come? Is there going to be better opportunities for me? So I saw one team on Twitter this morning which had 3 Arsenal players and 3 Liverpool players going into this weekend. It also was carrying a red flag for Damari Gray. He could be back, but are you bothered anyway? It's Manchester City at home. So you're effectively without 7 players going. He said these were all outfield players, by the way. It wasn't like it was Ramsdale, one of them. All outfield players. That for me is an instant free hit. Go and get on with it. You want them Liverpool and Arsenal players in the future game weeks to come, particularly obviously for the double for both teams in game week 29. I think that's definitely a free hit. The only way I could look at that and think that maybe not was if you'd planned to free hit in game week 28, because that same team actually didn't have many players that were doubling in game week 28.
Yeah.
But I think it would still be better because other teams have good fixtures in 28. Arsenal are at Watford, Liverpool have West Ham at home. Sorry, it beats Liverpool.
Yeah. Listen, you're not offending me by telling me we're going to go to Anfield and get a slap.
No, I don't think you would get a slap. But what I'm saying is you'd be happy to play the Liverpool players against West Ham. So I think in that sort of case, it would be a free hit now. In my case, I have 3 players. I have Trent, I have Mo Salah, I have Kieran Tierney. That's my bench for this week. I have some players who I don't particularly want in there, the 2 Watford forwards, but one of them is highly likely to go. We think Dennis is fit now for the game tomorrow night. So if he comes through unscathed, he's the more likely to stay. I'll move on Josh King to your man, Armando Broya. And I'll crack on with what I've got this week.
Honestly, I wish he actually was our man, Armando Broya.
In terms of, is there going to be another week where you might fall into that kind of, I want to, trap's the incorrect word, but the problem where you'd have a lot of players who have then got a blank game week? No, you're probably not. So, for example, in game week 33 is the FA Cup semi-finals. We know, well, game week 30 obviously is going to be a problem, but we're all aware of that. Game week 33 is the other one people are sort of thinking, well, if I don't free hit now, what does it mean for game week 33? Let's take the scenario that Liverpool are due to play Aston Villa in game week 33. Let's say Liverpool make the FA Cup semi-finals. That game is postponed. Liverpool are not going to blank in that game week. Like, no way. They will play in the midweek afterwards. They will either play the Manchester United game week 30 fixture or they'll play the same fixture against Aston Villa. None of the big clubs are going to blank in game week 33. The clubs that are involved in Europe, even Tottenham, for example, are not involved in Europe because Tottenham have got Arsenal and West Ham games are kind of selected for Sky Television coverage. Should Tottenham be postponed on that weekend in 33, Tottenham are definitely still going to play in that midweek. So you probably will get in game week 33. I'd say probably maximum 3 teams will blank. Could be 1 or 2, but they're not likely to be one of the high-profile clubs. Potentially, if Norwich got to the FA Cup semi-finals, Manchester United might be one that blanked, but that's an unlikely thing to consider at the moment. So most of those teams will still play in game week 33. That's important. But obviously, these teams are also unlikely to double. We've potentially got in game week 33 some teams doubling, such as I think Everton and Leicester would be almost certain to double. Same applies to Arsenal. Currently on my predicted schedule, I've got probably Newcastle and Crystal Palace to double in game week 33 as well. The fixtures in 33 are, I'd say, indifferent. Like Tottenham play West Ham. Manchester City go to Wolves. They might be carrying a few Wolves assets, for example, through this really good run because Wolves' fixtures are really good up to 32. Obviously, they've got that double in 28. I think it's worth looking ahead. And the one website I'd really recommend having a look through at the moment is FPL.team. So one of our patrons, Peter, has a website where you can plan your team through and look at what it would look like as it is now in game week 33. Yeah. Now, of course, we're heading into game week 27. If you're not using any chips in that period, you've got 6 free transfers, right? So you can muck about with your team and plan ahead. But I think it's worth considering, okay, what's the worst case scenario for 33? How would my team look? How do I feel if I get to that point where I'm still carrying treble Wolves? I think for people who've got, say, combination of like Sarr, Cody, Jimenez, something like that, it's quite feasible that you will get to that point and still have them. So how do you feel then walking into Manchester City as probably a single fixture in game week 33, if that's how it lands, for example? There isn't rights or wrongs, as ever. I don't believe, for me, it's worthwhile because I think that the team I have is capable, although unlikely, of outscoring a free hit team. And I'd rather attack it later on. That's a decision I've made. But many people are going to free hit now. I want to make one key point on something I'm hearing about template. A lot of what I'm seeing on Twitter at the moment is there was no point me posting my free hit draft because it looks like everybody else's. I get that. 71% of the live teams triple captained Mo Salah this week. It didn't stop anyone doing it, did it?
No, of course.
And on Twitter, it looked like everyone was wildcarding, didn't it?
Yeah.
But 71% of live teams triple captained Mo Salah. Remember, Twitter is a small bubble. If you free hit this week, that's a differential in itself, even if your team looks similar to everybody else's.
Yep,
because
agreed.
The whole community, the whole game is not going to be free hitting.
No.
There's plenty of players we know already without free hit chips.
Yep.
So just purely by doing it, that's putting you in a great position this week. Don't worry about what the rest of Twitter's doing. You can follow it. The template is strong for a reason.
Yeah, agreed. And there are some really good options to attack this week. I mean, City away at Everton is not looking like a good fixture. Spurs against Leeds is looking like a good fixture. Not looking like a good fixture for Everton, obviously. City. And then United have got a decent game at home.
I don't think anyone's free hitting Everton players in, mate.
Nah. Even Southampton at home to Norwich. Southampton in good form at the moment. So there are so many good options to free hit that I think, don't worry about it being particularly template. starting with your squad, my squad, what we've got in terms of template, I think the very easy place to start is Burnley, right? Double game week for Burnley. Therefore, do you slam in 3?
Yeah.
And I've slammed in 3.
Yeah, you definitely do. The template one going around at the moment, you'll see a lot, is Pope, me, and Weghorst.
Same as what I've got in mind.
The template one that people are going for. I think if Tarkowski plays against Tottenham tomorrow night, I think he's a slightly better pick than me.
Yeah, he's flagged, but obviously money is...
Well, he missed the game at the weekend because of COVID. What we don't know is, and we know that Sean Dyche likes to, if his team's played well, keep the team the same.
Yep.
So does he give Collins another shot, or does he look at it and go, no, Tarkowski's actually probably my best defender, I want to play him. So I think Tarkowski will probably come back in. If that's the case, and he comes through the game all right and his fitness levels look okay, which we can never be certain of with people returning from COVID, then I think you go with Tarkowski. I think it's... The people looking at it, the analytics, will say there's nothing between me, Tarkowski. I'll repeat what I said on yesterday's pod. Tarkowski's got a bigger head, and they're playing Palace and Leicester in the double, so I would want to go with Tarkowski as a bit more of an aerial threat at set pieces, would be my opinion. Connor Roberts is getting plenty of attention. I explained yesterday that I think that's a little bit dangerous, but I know Jack Toner, our Burnley correspondent at the moment, thinks that he's going to stay in. He's certainly going to keep the shirt. I'd just be conscious of starting with the game against Tottenham tomorrow night. It's 3 games in 6 nights, basically, and that's unusual for Burnley to have that sort of schedule. So it could be by the time you get to the last one, he goes, I'm going to play Lowton. That's what I think. So I'd rather go with the centre-backs. Pope is obvious, isn't it?
Yeah.
Literally, I cannot believe that anybody...
As is Weghorst.
I, to be honest, yeah. Yeah, I cannot believe that anyone free hits this week without those two. Weghorst's captaincy is going to be big.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be surprising. I think we're not talking about over 100% effective ownership. I'd be very surprised because I don't think enough people will free hit. And you have to remember, as a new player to the game, he literally had 0% ownership.
Yeah, of course.
3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But I think he could end up being the most
Massively
captains,
owned.
especially if a lot of the content creators are obviously pushing the idea of going that route and possibly captaining Weghorst. I don't think that's a certainty, though. Like, I think in the likes of Kane, Son, Manchester City players, even perhaps Bruno Fernandes, there are alternatives for the captaincy. I don't think it has to be a Burnley player. No. We do still have to remember that. Are they the lowest scorers in the league, other than probably Norwich?
Probably.
It's worth remembering that, but they were obviously very good at Brighton at the weekend. I think Cornet is probably a no. I think.
Too riskier with the injuries.
Well, Sean Dyche has said, did you see Sean Dyche's comment about him yesterday? So when Sean Dyche was doing his kind of a team news update, he said basically that he's not 100% yet. They're trying to be a bit careful with him. He basically said Ivory Coast training conditions and the way they trained was nothing like the way Burnley train.
The sunshine was
basically there. Possibly. But he was completely slamming it, wasn't he? So I think he was suggesting that Cornet had lost some fitness levels during the African Cup of Nations. And I think you probably don't want 2 Burnley attackers. Double defensive rather than double offensive.
Seems safer.
It does, yeah. So I think Pope, Weghorst, and then it's your choice of what you want to do. I think Tarkowski would be the way I would want to go, personally.
Have you tripled up on any other team?
Yeah.
City?
No one's not tripling up on City.
Yeah. And my 3 City are Cancelo,
yeah.
Obs. I've got Laporte in, just because of value compared to Diaz. I'd obviously prefer Ruben Diaz.
Yeah,
and I've got Gundogan in midfield.
Oh, that's interesting. Why Ilkay?
Well, listen,
could have got a hat trick on Saturday. In fairness.
Yeah, I was very impressed with the bits I saw of him on Saturday. To be fair, anyone could get left out. I feel like he's the most he's there as one of the 3 in behind the others that will hold his place. So. I just fancy Gundogan more than anything else. I've gone quite heavy with my others. Like, I've got 3 other premiums I would consider in there. You don't get any prize for guessing who.
I think we're going to land quite similar here.
So Gundogan's the one I've gone with. Could easily have been Bernardo. I don't want to pay the money for the others. It's too much money for a risk for me for the others that are more expensive.
Do you think Laporte's dangerous?
Little.
Kane took him all over the place on Saturday.
Yeah, but it's Kane, isn't it? I don't think he's going to have the same problem with Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Calvert-Lewin doesn't drop deep like that. He's in and around the 6-yard box. So.
Yeah, true. And if you want some further listening or viewing after this, I highly recommend a short-form extra time show that our friends Late Riser and Zofar did at the FPL Wire podcast. They had our friend Luke Disable on yesterday. Now, Luke is, I don't want to use the term expert, but let's say he's very clever in the way he predicts Pep Guardiola lineups. His record on Manchester City this season is very good. I remember a conversation I had with him last summer about Laporte and Cancelo both being kind of two left-sided players and one influencing each other. The fact Cancelo seems to be more permanently out there now on the left side is influencing Laporte's minutes. He's very clever with the way he understands the way Guardiola strategically predicts his lineups. It's only a half-hour show. I strongly recommend listening to that. Now, Luke's obviously gone sort of 5 days early in terms of a predicted Manchester City lineup for the weekend. And the key one he left out actually is Bernardo, who's played nearly every game. So he's got Gundogan in his predicted lineup. But I think if City go with their strongest, I'm not convinced that Gundogan's in it, mate. That feels like a really risky one, I think, Gundogan.
Yep.
Mahrez is proving really popular.
Even more risky, mate.
It is. But I just wonder if, in terms of Tottenham's setup at the weekend, if that's why Mahrez was left out, because of a consciousness of Tottenham's left side has historically given City problems with Son and stuff. If you get Sessegnon bombing on, which obviously didn't happen that much, then there's potential problems in terms of dragging Walker out of position. So I don't know if that's possibly why they started without Riyad Mahrez at the weekend. So I would think Mahrez plays. I think it's very popular. You would think Foden plays, but we don't know if there's any consequence of what happened at the weekend. I think most of us who've seen the video kind of looks like Phil Foden's pretty blameless and he's been targeted by people, unfortunately.
Yep.
KDB, pricey.
Expensive.
Sterling's the one who has
Raheem.
the biggest upside, I think. Like if I said to you now, one Man City player is going to score a hat-trick at the weekend, I think you'd go Sterling, wouldn't you?
Possibly, yeah.
But then he's also probably the most likely of the expensive ones to return the one-pointer, isn't he, at the same time? So I think it's a case of, are you happy and comfortable enough to pay for a Sterling or De Bruyne? I don't think you go with both. It's just too much, isn't it? Sterling and De Bruyne together. I think you can go with one. I think most people are going to go with Cancelo, and they're going to go with two City attackers. And it feels like the Twitter bubble is kind of building towards Mahrez and Foden, or Mahrez and Sterling, depending on affordability and what other players you're going for. I've got Foden in mind.
Okay.
With Laporte and Cancelo. I'm happy to take the risk with Laporte that he plays, knowing that he probably either plays or doesn't play at all, and therefore a substitute can obviously have the impact for me. But I think most are going to go to attacking City players.
Let's talk about your boys, the Lily Whites. James, who did you squeeze in from your team?
Like Kane and Son.
Yeah, me too. I've got both of them. Yeah,
I think on this you would go with both. You've also with Kane and Son, just generally in the game, it's difficult as a luxury to fit both of those players in with Mo Salah if you're carrying your likes of Trent and Andy Robertson and stuff as well. So because of no Mo, you've got the luxury, I think, to be able to fit them both in this week.
Correct.
Leeds, we know defensively has problems. I don't think we need to go into that any further. I think Kulusevski at the moment, if I had to lock it in now, would be a no. Because I think Lucas Moura's dribbling ability might be used to good effect in that particular fixture. Having watched the Tottenham City game back last night, I can see the brilliant defensive work that Kulusevski did in that game in more detail now. Against Leeds, running through, what do we talk about, midfield runners, I think Lucas might well be used in that particular fixture to run at them in central areas. So I think Kulusevski would be a gamble. I think reality defensively, it's just a no.
Yeah, forget about it.
Just a no. Any thoughts for Rafinha?
So we were having a conversation about money. I can afford a better player. So
I'd rather go with Rafinha this week than Willock, I think.
Yeah, Willock's not in my team. But yeah, I agree.
I just mean in terms of an example, you might let Newcastle v Brentford and Leeds v Tottenham.
Yeah.
I'd rather have Rafinha as the talismanic ability. If Leeds did turn Tottenham over 3-1, which I think was the score last season, then you'd fancy Rafinha to be involved.
Red Devils, how many of them did you get in? Manchester United?
2.
Me too. Bruno?
Yes.
I've got Jadon Sancho.
Yes, so have I, yeah.
So
I meant to talk about him yesterday.
You know the irony is so far we've only got 2 players different in Gundogan versus Foden and me versus Tarkowski. I did my free hit in about 2 minutes. Don't overthink it is the lesson of the day.
Yeah, I think most are probably going to go one defensive, one offensive, I think, for United. With the defensive one, I think the popular one I'm beginning to see is sort of Luke Shaw.
Yeah.
Who's obviously played the last few games at left back. And of course, if you're going Pope, you're not having De Gea. De Gea is the best defensive one to have, but you're not going without Pope for the sake of De Gea. I did look at it, but it just feels ridiculous free hitting and not having Nick Pope, I think. So I looked at it as going, if I'm going double City and I'm going over Burnley, that's all right. That's enough. Could I squeeze in a second offensive player? Ronaldo, unbelievably, I just don't think anybody will be free hitting him in.
No.
Well, I'm sure some will, but can't see it. You wouldn't even Watford at home. You wouldn't pick him over Kane this week, would you?
No.
Can't see it. I think Sancho was really good on Sunday. He's had a few recent returns. Scored against Southampton. Obviously had assist at the weekend as well. I think he's got 3 attacking returns now in his last 3. It feels like it slowly might be falling into place, but I feel like he's one you would have no confidence in actually buying at the moment.
No, but free hit
for one good fixture at the weekend. Yeah, I think Jadon Sancho's a really, really interesting option. I would prefer that sort of combination of, say, Sancho and Foden rather than forcing in De Bruyne or Sterling and then having to really downgrade Sancho down to sort of 5 million or so.
Yep.
No, I'd rather go down this route, actually. So, yeah, I've got the 2 offensive United players. Plus, I think with Ismail Assar back, I think Watford actually do carry a little bit more of a threat themselves offensively on the counter-attack now.
Last player, I think we both have the same looking at, is Broja.
It's got to be. It's Breuer, yeah.
Breuer, Amanda Breuer is in. So, really, we've got the same free hit team bar the bench.
Read out your 11?
Pope, me, Laporte, Cancelo, Son, Fernandes, Gundogan, Sancho, Kane, Weghorst, Breuer.
So the difference is we've got
Foden and me versus so I've got Gundogan and me, and you've got Foden and Tarkowski.
Yeah.
Simple as that. But then probably down to money more than anything else. I don't know what your bench is like, but I've got Sanchez, Johnson, Duffy, and Billy Gilmore as my bench.
Duffy? What did you bother with that for?
Cheap, mate.
Yeah, I'll get you 2 cheaper ones.
Go on,
There's one at West Ham, Ben Johnson.
I've got Johnson in, I said.
You've got Javier Manquillo at Newcastle, 3.9 now. At the moment, we don't know if he's fit.
That's the problem.
You've also got Daniel Amati at Leicester. I know you don't want to start him, but his final sub, it's all right. He should be all right, shouldn't you?
Who's your midfielder sub?
Jacob Ramsey is the obvious perfect first sub here, isn't he, I think? Although it's a difficult fixture away to Brighton, just his value for me, having bought him at 4.5 as well. If I was free hitting, then
leave him in there.
Yeah, it would still be Jacob Ramsey for myself.
Yeah. And looking at your team, does it tempt you in any way to pull the trigger? Because I look at mine, I'm like, oh, wow, a team that has 3 City and then 3 premiums in Son, Fernandes and Kane, and then 3 players with a double game week in Pope, me and Weghorst, and then who are my others? It's just Sancho and Breuer. Does tempt me. I'm not going to lie, it does tempt me to think, you know what, that could be a good 75 pointer.
It could. No, listen, I, in terms of my own actual team this week, I'd probably put my own team. It's going to be very dependent on what, if I go with Kane captain, what he does, right? If Kane as captain performs very well for me and say Weghorst doesn't, I can win on that alone, basically, can't I? I would probably put generally the team I've got would probably be 20, 25 points down, I think, on the free hit. But I don't think it'd be much. I think that's kind of worst case scenario. I mean, I don't suppose many people are going to free hit Jared Bowen this week. I'm still going to be sitting with him. It's not like is he suddenly incapable after one blank? I mean, he's not, is he?
No.
West Ham could win 2-0 on Sunday and he might get both. And I think most people, rightly, because of Wolves' defensive record, would probably just avoid that game this weekend, I would have thought. Because I don't think you'd be that confident in a Wolves clean sheet either. very capable of it, but they're not the best options on a free hit this week, are they?
No.
So I think you avoid that fixture. I'm then sitting there with Bowen in there. Let's say Wolves do get that clean sheet. Well, I'm going to be sitting there with one defensively.
Kilman, yeah.
I haven't got any United defensive in that predicted in that free hit team, but maybe they will keep a clean sheet at home to Watford. Maybe De Gea and Dalot will both play, and there's 12 to 15 points on the board that I wouldn't have had otherwise. I look at City could go to Everton, so I would free hit 2 defensive. I think that's the way I would do it for City. They could go to Everton and win 5-1, couldn't they? Mm. And it could be two pointers. Probably not when you've got Cancelo there, but I've got Cancelo anyway, right?
Yeah.
Burnley, let's just break this down for a second. Palace away at the weekend.
Palace were really good against Chelsea at home. Good.
But Selhurst Park's tough, isn't it? Now, admittedly,
easy, yeah.
A lot of people remember the Burnley double game week from last year when they went to Selhurst Park and won 3-0. People remember the Matt Lowton goal, for example. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean they're going to do it again, dude. I mean, it's tough. Selhurst Park's tough, mate, for anybody. So are we really expecting Burnley to clean sheet at Palace at the weekend?
They could, but yeah.
I get Burnley can clean sheet in any game.
Are we just using this pod to talk everyone out of free hit?
No, I'm not talking anyone out of it. Honestly, I think it's play it your own way. And I think the majority of people listening to this will be free hitting. There'll be more listening to this that are than aren't, I think. And that's absolutely fine. Then it's Leicester the Tuesday. And I kind of repeat what I said before on our Friday Patreon pod when we was talking about Leicester going to Wolves. I said, I always still fancy Leicester to score. So it's quite conceivable that you free Burnley end up doing nothing.
Vardy might be fit then as well.
So I'm kind of punting against the Burnley double a little bit as well. Mm. And we've seen historically with Watford recently, there's no guarantee that let's be honest, Burnley are one of the poorer teams in this league. There's no guarantee that they're all going to play. What are you actually expecting from... If you go James Tarkowski, I think realistically you're sitting there hoping for the 1-0 against Leicester, he scores the 15-pointer, right? That's the allure. Same with Ben Mee and stuff. The reality is... They're probably for a par for the week. Tarkowski is probably looking at, say, 8 points or so. If there's a clean sheet. That's probably the sort of par that you're looking at. Pope ceiling is a little bit higher than that because we know one clean sheet could be a 9-10 pointer in itself for him. Mm. So I'm kind of betting against Burnley a little bit. And I know it's worth saying, myself, Suj, from my own current team versus what I'd free hit, the only players I'd still have in both teams are Cancelo and Harry Kane. So 9 changes would feel justifiable. I just don't think there's enough in it for me when someone like Bowen could perform very well this weekend. United could keep a clean sheet. And I think many will go without a United defensive player.
Are there any other teams or players that deserve an honourable mention?
Well, we haven't spoken about Southampton much. And I said yesterday, I think...
Roger in. I had Livramento on my bench until I ran out of money.
Part of that template is a lot of people go Livramento. So those who go to City attacking are probably going to go Livramento.
Yeah, agreed. Good shout.
And they'll end up going that way rather than, say, Luke Shaw. So it's absolutely fine. I think Ralph Hasenhüttl's comments yesterday were interesting. To follow up on what I said about Peral yesterday, he actually missed the game at the weekend with COVID. So you assume he's back available for Norwich. Guess away. Guess away in terms of what combination he plays. Between Livramento, Cole, Peters and Peral.
If a football player now gets COVID, but they don't have any symptoms, are they still allowed to play?
I think from Thursday we're okay now, aren't we?
They can just play?
I think so.
Madness, isn't it?
I don't know. But isn't that the legal requirement now that it doesn't matter?
Work. Going to work, isn't it?
Yeah, so it doesn't matter.
Wicked.
I don't know if the Premier League would view that differently in terms of the potential health risk to opposition players and the potential to spread. But yeah, we're certainly at the point now where COVID is no longer a team issue, I don't think, unless we have a big outbreak. A game's not going to be postponed now with 3 COVID cases, or it's not going to happen. We're still going to get the odd ones. We're seeing it. Peral, Reguilon, Tarkowski, it is still about, obviously. And that's why also, if you are free hitting, by the way, you shouldn't completely decimate your bench this week. I would have one half decent player on the bench because anyone could miss out with COVID, right? JWP, Southampton, just to throw a few other names out. Even Che Adams, if you fancy going perhaps double Saints attack against Norwich. Even Brandon Williams for Norwich, leave him as one of your cheap substitutes as an option. What about Pukki? I mean, difficult to pick Pookie this week over Adams or Breuer or
Yeah, forget about it.
I think,
No.
yeah. Brentford, Newcastle is a few interesting cheapy ones. Brentford could be good ones to cover. No one talking about Ivan Toney at the moment, who could be back this weekend. Someone like Mbumo out of position 1 week could open up space for you. You mentioned Joe Willock at Newcastle.
Yep.
I throw Ryan Fraser's name in. After Suj's comments on Chris Wood yesterday, he's definitely scoring this weekend. Mankio is cheap as, isn't he? Dubravka, 4.4 keeper.
For the bench, maybe, yeah.
I think you'd go Foster, wouldn't you? Bench, I think 4.1 this week. Just cover it just in case. But yeah, there's some options in that fixture. Palace themselves. Zaha.
Nah.
I mean, when we think about
Burnley going to kick him. He's going to get wound up and he's going to get a yellow or a red.
But he can turn it on in these sort of games at Selhurst Park, can't
maybe.
he?
Nah, too much money for me.
Even we're all looking at Burnley defensively. But why shouldn't we be looking at Anderson or Gahey or Tyreek Mitchell, for example?
Yeah.
So I think Palace is one I'll definitely get overlooked this week. Watford, I think you overlook at United. I think other than Foster will be most people's substitute keeper on a free hit, I imagine. Everton you overlook. And West Ham Wolves, as I said, is largely going to be overlooked as well, isn't it?
It's going to be a tough game for both teams. I think it's going to be a difficult game.
I just think, in spite of Wolves' great defensive record, I think it's difficult with the Burnley double, City, Livramento's price and Southampton's fixture. And even if you think like Dallow's going to play or if Luke Shaw's affordable, I think you're picking these guys over Wolves. Bowen, he's gonna be missing from most free hit teams, isn't he? He's still in good form, right? One blank hasn't suddenly taken him out of it. If West Ham do well on Sunday, he's the most likely man, isn't he?
Yeah.
And I think we should remember that. So, talking about talisman, you should always consider talisman in free hit teams, the likes of Bowen, Wilfried Zaha, possibly. And Leicester will get overlooked as well, particularly as they don't play till Tuesday. But I think the likes of Maddison could be an outside bet, potentially. Remember, they don't play at the weekend, so it's not until Tuesday their fixture. I mean, it's too tough a call at the moment between Daka and Iheanacho in terms of who would play. Even though it's Burnley and we're one of the weaker attacks, I don't think you'd go, I'll have a look at Luke Thomas or Kasper Schmeichel, for example. I don't think you would. So I think Leicester will get overlooked. I think Maddison would maybe be an interesting one, but again, when you sort of compare him similar sort of price to Foden and stuff, I think this week you go with that, don't you? I think this week I'd go Zaha over Maddison, I think, in spite of the fact they're playing the same team.
Yeah. There we go. That's a rundown of Free Hit 27 for you listeners. As James mentioned, for the patrons later on, we'll be recording a Wildcard 28, albeit we don't know the FA Cup outcomes. But
I'm going to look at different ways of doing for the patrons today, the different ways of potentially doing that wildcard in 28 in terms of, are you bench boosting 29? Are you free hitting 30? Are you not free hitting? Look at different ways that you might go about setting it up, because it's becoming a more popular idea. What I would say is, spoiler, having looked at it properly last night, I'm not a big fan of it.
No. And then, of course, all the extra content this week. Sky tomorrow, COTC Thursday, and a deadline day stream and Ask James on Friday, whatever it may be.
Midweek review.
Of course, there's 4
Talk
games.
about my trip to Burnley. Hopefully I'll make it back in one piece.
Not covered in snow. Thank you for all your support. Head over to patreon.com/Planet FPL if you want to put pennies in the jar. And see you tomorrow. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Play it your way. Cue music, please, man. Sharp.